So if you're amazing at accounting and you want to get into security, go do accounting for a security company. And then once your toe is in the door, you can pivot. But putting this fake barrier of I can't get into security because I'm an accountant or I'm in sales or whatever, those are lies, man. They're lies. And they're basically perpetrated by generally guys like me that have been doing this for 20 years, that the route that I did is the right route. You must go, like Stefan, be an intern, and then after you're an intern, must be an analyst, and then after you're an analyst, you have to go get your CCNA. But the fundamentals, hustle, get out, sell yourself, like those fundamentals are still the same.
Welcome to Cybersecurity Heroes, an IRONSCALES podcast about you, the heroes of cybersecurity. You're about to hear and learn practical and experiential knowledge in our conversations with security leaders and practitioners and other influential InfoSec stars, so we can become more cyber resilient and safer together. Cybersecurity Heroes is brought to you by IRONSCALES, the most powerfully simple email security platform. And I'm your host, Brendan Rudd. And now, let's get into the show. Hey, Stefan. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm super happy to be here. How are you doing?
Great, and thank you for taking the time to join us today. Before we get into the show, I'd love to hear a little bit about you, your background, and what you're up to these days. And then we'll dive deeper into your journey as we get into the show.
Yeah, absolutely. So the summary is I don't know if you're supposed to celebrate this or not, but I celebrated with a beer last month my 20-year anniversary of responding to my first cybersecurity incident in cybersecurity. So 20 years ago, basically, it was a worm that got onto the network that I was working on at the time. I was the most junior person there, and the inception of me into security was just a phone call of, wait, what happened? I'll be right there. Those fundamentals really haven't changed. I still love quarterbacking incident response. I don't really have my calluses on my fingers anymore from doing the actual work. I do more of the stakeholder engagement level stuff now. But yeah, 20 years in and out of cybersecurity. Let's see, did electrical engineering undergraduate, so did some still like low level engineering firmware type level stuff. And then was in the Army for a while, and in the Army's Cybercore for a while, then started a veteran-focused cyber recruiting company, which I sold to StrataCore and stayed on as their vice president of cyber. So now, effectively, I'm a security broker. So my job is when our clients have needs, I don't just come in and sell a point solution, or we're not a vendor broker. My job is to actually solve their needs by bringing in what they need. So maybe they need a security operations center. Cool. I go out, I bring in potentially any security operations center on the market, and then that vendor compensates me. So I'm a vCISO, but my clients don't give me money, which is really convenient for them, right?
Cool. Well, thanks for setting the stage for us. And as part of this mini series that I'm working on, I've been bringing on guests from the entire cyber ecosystem, trying to find solutions to fill the empty seats, closing the resources gap one seat at a time. I'd love to spend some time quickly sharing your journey into cyber with our audience, and I know it will resonate with veterans, especially as you're very much involved in that community. So perhaps we should get into your journey, how you got into security.
Yeah, totally good. Let's see, I'll start by going way back, and not just how I was trying to get into security, but trying to get into tech. And I think this is relevant because it's still very applicable today. So I was a kid in Northern Illinois, and I knew this tech thing was cool, and I could figure out a lot of stuff on my own. And like probably most people listening to this, I was the help desk for the extended family. Hey, my computer's slow. Yeah, sure, fine, whatever. So it's like, why shouldn't I be getting paid for this? Well, I don't want to make my family pay. So what I did was I started going out and finding businesses in the area that were doing basically IT back then. There wasn't much security. And I literally would walk in and I couldn't even drive at this point. I was literally like having to have my mom drive me or ride my bike. And I was getting these interviews because mostly they're like, oh, look, a cute kid. So I was, sit down with CEOs and say, hey, I'd like to work for you potentially for free for a little while just to learn what I'm doing. And then if I'm good enough at the end of summer or the semester, then maybe we could talk about a job. And I did that a number of times, and the answer was no, come back when you can drive. uh, and then, that eventually one of those materialized. And I got picked up. This is still before I can drive. I got picked up for an internship, and that was paid. And then I got another paid one, and another paid one. And so here I was graduating high school, having worked basically 4 years in IT already, and had lived through a couple breaches basically, and said, okay, if that's what's going on at the operating system, what's going on the chips? That's what took me to electrical engineering, and then went away from it. I really love hard problems, so I transitioned to what I still believe is one of the hardest problems in the world, which is the goal of being a Army company commander in combat. So I could have gone into, say, military intelligence or the Army Signal Corps, and I said, I want to do something. Like, I can go do tech whenever for the rest of my life. I'm going to go be an infantry officer. So that took me to Ranger School, graduated Ranger School, and some airborne and some other stuff, like jumping out of helicopters and planes and trying to avoid alligators as you walk through swamps. And then left that, and I made the last flight when my unit was going to Afghanistan. So some of the people had already been there for 5 months or more by the time I got there. Met my platoon in country. Literally, we're going outside the wire. We're on patrol. We're on mission. And then a few months into that, I'll save some of the story time, but found out after we got back that I had broken my back. And literally, if I have a weak spine, maybe I should not be doing this thing that's going to cause me more physical damage.
How do you find out you broke your back like after the fact? Didn't that hurt?
So I thought I had a hernia.
Okay.
Thought I had a hernia. So I finished deployment, came back, and went to the doctor, and doctor said, hey, we don't think there's anything terrible here. Go to chiropractor and physical therapy. Chiropractics for a year, physical therapy for a year. And then I had this agreement with my soldiers. My senior sergeant, I said, hey, we're going to be open and transparent. I am in pain. You need to know that I am in pain because I need this external feedback. I know that I need external feedback because otherwise I'm just literally going to go until I can't walk anymore, which happened. So I come back in from physical training in the morning. I don't know, run. I couldn't tell you what the workout was, but my platoon sergeant and my squad leaders are all sitting there, and they say, hey, sir, the guys can tell. The guys can tell that you're actually in pain. So we got to figure this out. So by the end of that week, I finally got the right x-rays and found out I'd broken my back a few times. So then went from, which I don't recommend, by the way. It sucks. So I went up to a different unit, a higher level headquarters, ended up getting spinal fusion, reconstructive surgery, found out when I came out of surgery that I didn't even know it, didn't realize it. But at first was paralyzed. My surgeon's like, yeah, it'll probably come back. So a day goes by, nothing. 2 days go by, and I finally get some feeling back in my legs. A lot of assistants learn to walk again, learn to run again, and that's when so I know I can recover from this. I'm fully confident, but maybe I shouldn't stay in the infantry anymore. Maybe carrying 140 pounds and running for 12 miles isn't in my future anymore. So that's when I switched over to the Army Cyber Corps and got to do some really fun, interesting things, left my stamp on it, and a couple of really cool, wrote some of the doctrine that's still being used today about how to run, operate, train, and maintain these big cyber units, and then was still having trouble like walking into work. So I got medically retired. And then that's when I took a look around and said, okay, I want to start a company. I don't know what I want to do. What will I be successful in? I have no experience in most of these things. I'm probably not as technical as I could be right now. So if I'm going to launch something, probably shouldn't be me doing the work. Okay, so I've got amazing connections. How can I leverage those? Well, if they're getting out of the military, recruiting. So that's where I started the recruiting company. And then I thought I was going to be part-time because I was working for a venture capital firm doing technical due diligence on mostly security and energy deals. Uh, and then the partner agreement changed a little bit, and I said, I don't like this new agreement as much. So I think I'll just take my thing full time. So I'd found it in January. I took it full time in early April, was cash flow positive by August. And then by February of the next year, I'd sold the company. So very
Wow.
rapid scale out. Still kind of hard to believe. Like as I say that, it's still like I don't fully even believe that I did that thing, but I did. Sold the company, and then now I get to do what I'm basically truly best at, which is interfacing with clients and solving big problems.
That was an awesome story. If that doesn't inspire people out there to get off their butts and do something, I'm not sure what will.
Oh
So,
yeah, I had no board, I had no experience, I had no education about being a recruiter. I had never been in HR or in the military. We call those the S1s, N1s. I'd never done any of that. It was just pure pride, vision, drive, and execution. It was the stupidest way to start a company, but it worked.
well, I think as Steve Jobs says, it takes crazy people to change the world. And so here's to the crazy ones. They did an ad on that in the 80s, famous Apple ad. So coming back to your connection to Army Corps, what skills and advantages would you say that you brought with you in your company and to your clients? And what do you think, speaking to vets right now wanting to get into cyber, like what inspiration can you give to them?
Yeah. Yeah. So why don't I tell you a story that I think highlights why it's important? So in the CyberCore, I effectively had this one customer. I had a couple customers, but I had this 1 year-long engagement with a massive customer, multiple countries, multiple continents. And they effectively, like, we were assigned to them. They didn't come to us. So it's, hey, you're going to go solve these crazy huge problems for an entire continent. But they don't want you.
Start small.
They do not want you. So to highlight that, like when I finally got there, I went into one of their big operation centers, and they had a map of the world with pins, physical pins, because you need to have digital and analog, physical pins in every location where they had troops. But they refused. This is still early on. They refused to put a pin in our location. So we're talking a really tough sell. So we go through, and after a year of working with every stakeholder, senior stakeholders down to the silos of excellence across this, like literally flying to cities here in the US, cities abroad, all over the place. After a year, we finally got them to say, oh yeah, we do need your stuff. And thankfully they didn't have, there was no massive breach, a fire requiring a fire extinguisher. We were able to bring us as the fire extinguisher before they had a fire. But it took us, and we had small steps, but we really broke open at the year mark. So the first thing is, what veterans usually bring to the table is a dramatic understanding of how organizations live, breathe, function. And inside of that, me effectively as a sales leader, when I engage with my clients, I don't have to necessarily have all of the exact information of who the players are. With a couple of pieces of information, I can see through all of the obstacles that they're about to go through. And I generally, as I just walk through that with, they're like, do you have cameras? Can you see how we work internally? No, I can't. I've just done this, and veterans have done this so many times. Okay, friction point, friction point, friction point, friction point. So here's what we're going to do to get around them. So we can get disparate organizations with competing priorities to yes pretty quick. And thankfully, in most organizations that veterans are going to, they're not like they're not an entire continent with other sites all over the world to drive to yes. Usually it's much, much smaller.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that we bring that most people don't get until their 40s, 50s, or even later, that we get at 25, 24, somewhere in there. So being able especially in the veteran world, the role of change agent is something that we are comfortable with. You want your organization to train or to change, bring in a veteran. Because we've lived through that. We've stood up units. We've shut down things. We've had to go out and whether it's in combat or in role playing or what have you. Like one of the biggest things that one of my commanders did in Afghanistan was getting the local units, the local partner units, to go build some security things, and we would even do it for them. But go build some security things in places that they needed it. And I can remember this one instance where my commander and I'd sat with him on some of these meetings for literally like 3 months of him going, "Yes, we need to have security here and here." And then finally, the partner comes in one day after 3 or 4 months and goes, "I think we need security here." Ah, yes. So, and he hadn't just blasted them. He had changed tactics, and I'd watched how he changed the approach over and over, and eventually it worked and it changed. And because of that, we were able to literally take people that had like 12-year-old kids that had never had a fire at night in the cold and bring stability to them to the point where they could not be cold at night. So when you take that reference and put it into here, and oh, great, our revenue went up. Yeah, revenue, man, that's way easier than trying to make sure we can get kids heat at night. A little different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I could listen to your stories forever, but I wanted to take it into the theme of the show and see how we can bring your experience and provide solutions to a lot of the challenges that we're facing today in hiring. And I think it's a good segue from the last story that you just told us. So I would love to get your point of view and solutions to this talent gap and skills shortage. Do you believe in it, and how can we solve it?
So I do believe in it. There's caveats there. See, how do I want to approach this one? This will be fun. Okay. I think there's a lot of misinformation for people that are trying to get into security, first off. And we can circle back to that. But the outcome of that is there's many people doing work. So they're doing things right, but they're not doing the right things, which leads then to the gap of they spend 6 months, 12 months, 18 months trying to just get into the industry. And last year I mentored about 180 people. This year I'm on track to do way more than that. So I see it from both the mentoring side and then as building a recruiting company, and then like, what is it my clients want? So the employers, the companies that are hiring new people, what is it that they want? And there's that big difference. So I'll go Robert Herchevek from the Herchevek group. He's on Shark Tank. He said a number of times in many open forums that he thought when he was building his empire in the beginning, he thought if he had the best product or service in the world, if he was literally the best person in the world, companies would be breaking down his door to get access to what he has. And he worked on that and he became the best in the world. And he goes, "Where's all my clients? I did this." And then the realization that hit him was it doesn't matter if you're the best in the world if no one knows about it. So one of the things that I make my mentees do before they sit down and talk with me is do a Myers-Briggs, do a cell. It doesn't have to be Myers-Briggs. It can be whatever. Pick your profile. I think, and I don't have the quantitative numbers on this, but it's less than 1 in 10 that are trying to break into cybersecurity that are extroverts. The vast majority are introverts. And so marketing themselves often feels disingenuous. I mentored a gentleman last week who he started off the conversation. He said, "Okay, how can I help? Tell me about yourself." He goes, "What's next?" "What do you mean, what's next?" He goes, "Well, how do I start the conversation?" "Which conversation?" And okay, what about this? And then finally you dug down to it. You ask why 7 times. Finally, we get down to it, and he goes, "I've connected with 50 recruiters on LinkedIn, but I don't have any job offers." "Okay, what does that mean?" "I've connected with them." "Okay, have you talked with them?" "No." "Oh, that's the conversation you're having trouble starting. Why would they want to talk with me?" "Because you're a candidate, because you've done many of the things that you should be doing. Okay. But how do I start that? You're going to get better at this. You're not great at it now, but start off with, hey, can we get a virtual coffee? Hey, could I do an informational interview? Like, you have to start the conversation, guy. It doesn't matter if you're the best in the world if no one knows. So the people that I see breaking into security the fastest, and here's generally what I recommend, because these two things, they may not be causal, but they definitely correlate. The people that are putting themselves out there, that, you know, if they're going through, maybe they are going through a boot camp because they found the right one for them. Maybe they are going through didactic college education. Maybe they've an associate's or a master's. Okay. So if nothing else, you're building those study guides before you go into an exam, right? Yeah, of course I am. I'm studying my butt off. Okay. Take a picture of the study guide that you just built and post it. If you're taking 2 classes, that's probably a quiz or test a week-ish. So that means by the end of a year, you can probably put out 50 single-page study guides to help other people. And then suddenly you've just done marketing. And at the end of that year, now people are like, oh, wow, Brendan really, like, he's put out some good stuff. I use a study guide occasionally. Like he put out a thing on Vim or whatever, right? So by the time you get through some of that work that you were doing anyway, great. Now to circle back a little bit and answer your question at a broader level, one of the biggest fallacies that I see is people saying, hey, I'm a mid-careerist or I'm late in my career. I don't want to go be a security help desk guy or an analyst or level 1. Maybe they'll be taking a pay cut in half, a quarter. They don't want to do that. Yeah, okay. I'm not going to get into security because I'm going to take a pay cut. You don't have to take a pay cut to get into security. So what I try to tell people to do is, after you've got that great self-assessment, what is it you're truly best at, personality-wise, and what are you amazing at? Do that in the confines of security. So if you're amazing at sales, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to sell rockets. You don't have to be a neurosurgeon to sell medical devices. So if you're good at sales, you'll be good at sales and security once you get just a tad bit of domain knowledge. And then after you get a little bit of domain knowledge, all you really have to do is understand your different buyer profile and you'll be fine. So if you're amazing at accounting and you want to get into security, go do accounting for a security company. And then once your toe is in the door, you can pivot. But putting this fake barrier of I can't get into security because I'm an accountant or I'm in sales or whatever, those are lies, man. They're lies. And they're basically perpetrated by generally guys like me that have been doing this for 20 years, that the route that I did is the right route. You must go, like Stefan, be an intern, and then after you're an intern, you must be an analyst, and then after you're an analyst, you have to go get your CCNA, and then if you're CCNA, and then it's like this lockstep idea. No, that's how we got in, and the landscape has changed in 20 years.
Yeah.
But the fundamentals, hustle, get out, sell yourself, like those fundamentals are still the same. So for all my introverts out there, the takeaway is if you want to break into security, market yourself, and this is coming from an introvert, figure out how to market yourself, figure out how to sell yourself a little bit, smile, talk to other people, and then combine what you're truly best at. Like Christian Espinosa, who I know you've talked to, he talks about finding Kaizen. Kaizen. Like why? It's your why. plug for Christian Espinosa's book, by the way. He's a friend of mine. The smartest person in the room. Done. So yeah, go find your Kaizen and then do that in security. But then how else do you do that? Networking. Oh my gosh. Not just your self-marketing and putting your like study guides or whatever out on social media. If you're not networking, you're wrong. And the point that I'll highlight right there is when I was launching my company, I tried marketing. I tried so many different ways that failed and failed. Hey, great. Now I know marketing, again, the hard way. But my first client came in because of my network, my personal network, which then became my professional network. My second client came in because of networking. My third client came in because of networking. My 17th, first, second, third, all the way to 17th clients were all because of networking before I finally figured out marketing and bringing in clients in a completely different capacity. So only because I was out wearing down the bottom of my shoes, walking around and talking to people pre-COVID. Yes, you can still do the thing virtually right now. You can go to meetups in Tampa if you live in Seattle. It's fine. It's easy. You just sign up and go. And then as you go through those networking things and capture the flags and whatever you can, every one of those is an opportunity to meet someone. So if you don't come out of one of those opportunities, even if it's only an hour-long networking event, you should have at least 2 coffees and or beers or what have you. Maybe it's waters. You may, hey, can we meet for water? Sure. For every one of those. And if you do one a week, so if you have one good social media post a week and you go to one networking event a week, and every networking event you go to, you have 2 coffees afterwards. At the end of a year, you've really driven your professional network and your opportunities. And that's where the vast majority of jobs come from, is your network. So if you're not doing that, then you're wrong. So I think circle back here, the original question, is there a cybersecurity skills talent shortage? In many ways, yes. But in many ways, it's actually because the supply of people don't understand the gap of what employers really need. Now, the finite part of that is having recruited for hundreds of job positions. I have never once had a cybersecurity or anything that's close to it, because all the parallel career paths, tech, dev, whatever, I've never once had a vendor come to me and say, hey, Stefan, I'm looking for somebody with A plus, Net plus, Sec plus, CEH, or any of those 4. So my general guidance to people is if you want to get in, do what you're best at, network your butt off, figure out what you really love to do, and you can totally do it. And they go, okay, so well, what certification should I really get? Well, the certification that you should really get, where's the world going? Is it going towards enterprise? Sure. But where's the world really going? Right now, it's going towards cloud. Okay, well, should I still get a certification? Yeah. AWS Solutions Architect. But Stefan, that's not a security certification. Yeah, I know. But cloud drives revenue for a bunch of companies. And so if you understand solutions architect or sysops administrator or the developer, any of those 3, or the associate level search, those let you go into AWS security. So now if you can go do security for a company where cloud, whatever they're building, is their revenue, oh, breath of fresh air. Like AJ Yon, a friend of mine, 6 cloud certs in AWS. AJ, if I get that wrong, you can absolutely call me out. And then he's, oh, cool. Now I can see the matrix. And then so he just started his own company, Bite Check, based off of what he knew and the consulting work that he was doing. Okay, great. Phenomenal. Yeah. Excellent. So getting that fundamentals for the next thing that comes out is where I usually recommend starting. And if you're not really confident in that, then AWS Cloud Practitioner and Azure and Google Cloud Platform have similar certifications. Just go do them. Those are the ones I recommend.
Cybersecurity Heroes is brought to you by IRONSCALES, an AI-powered, self-learning email security platform that helps security professionals proactively prevent, detect, and remediate phishing attacks in a matter of seconds, not hours or days. And we have an exclusive offer for our podcast listeners. Discover dormant phishing threats in your organization's mailboxes. Get a free 90-day scan back with a detailed report. Integrate in seconds with 2 clicks via API to Microsoft Office 365 and see what your current email security is missing. Go to ironscales.com/free scan to learn more.
And I know we're going to touch on them again later in the show, and I don't want to give too many spoilers because I know you have some controversial opinions on a lot of this stuff, which is
I do.
great. I'm looking forward to diving in. But I wanted to just come back for a second because I really loved all the advice you were giving to job seekers. But I want to spend a couple minutes or more on the recruiter side the companies. What can they do differently? How can they change to reduce the talent gap and the skill gap? Like, my first inclination would be to invest in training. A lot of people will tell you, no, you got to hit the ground running. There's no training. So I'd like to get your view on what companies can do to fill their part. You covered the job seeker side, but what can companies do better and differently?
So it depends on their appetite. And having coached and consulted in this space previously, because I will like when you get a job order, when you run a recruiting company, right? I get this job order in. And then in order to hand that off to my actual recruiters, my basically my hunt people, my people that are doing OSINT, they're out there trying to find, their targets. And oh, by the way, for anybody doing prospecting or hunting and recruiting, go take an OSINT course because it's damn near the same thing. So I get this job description, I build a new contract with the client, I hand it off to my team. I'm not handing it off to my team until I go through line by line on this job description with the hiring manager of the client and say, hey man, or hey lady, do you really believe this? Tell me why. And then I usually, let's see, do I have one right here? I don't have one right here. I usually red pen the crap out of their job descriptions. Why do that? Because they suck. So for anybody that's going to be hiring, anyone listening to this that's going to go hire security people, I feel for you. Why do I feel for you? Because the market, for every single cybersecurity practitioner, there's about 10 IT people. And then for every 10 IT people, there's about 100 developers. So if you have to go bring 60 developers on and 3 IT practitioners, that means you're not going to put in the time to learn what a good certification for a cybersecurity practitioner is. I get that. So for anybody listening that's going out to get a job, that's why job descriptions generally suck. There's a second piece to it is hiring manager says, I need people. Oh my gosh, my hair's on fire. They go up, they advocate, they get budget. And then HR says, give us a JD, job description. And hiring manager says, what do I really need? I need somebody that's good at Elasticsearch and Kibana. So Elk. So go find me somebody that's good at Elk. And then HR goes, this isn't a job description. Okay. And they build it out and they put the same stuff they normally do. 10 years of experience. Yada, yada. And then legal looks at it and goes, yes, but we must also have degree. Yada, 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 yada. And so then you get these like stupidly inflated things and gross. So what I would do is I'd counsel them and go, okay, here's what we're going to do. 1, what is it you say you want the person to do? You want them to do this and this, and this and this and this? No, that's not a person. That's a team. I can broker teams now, by the way. So cool. So if we want this to be a person, we're going to scratch some things off. We're going to get this down to what it is they actually need to do. And then we're going to go down and do must-haves. And then we'll go down and do need-to-haves or nice-to-haves. And then we're going to go through and say, hey, here's what your first 90 days looks like. Here's how we define success in the first 90 days. Okay. And then after that, great. Here's some other things that you're going to do after that first 90 days. So we can really tell the practitioner to let the practitioner opt in or out. Wow, there really is a plan for this position. It's not just the kid at their own table at lunch. We're going to bring them in. They're going to be a part of the team. And then we're going to go from there. And then you have a realistic job description. Cool. Now, the other side of that coin is getting the hiring managers and the recruiters and HR to go through and really think about it and force them to go to water and then hopefully drink. So scoping out what the job actually is, it was a huge part of the opportunity. Then when you get that through that red penning, we get a good understanding, then we can go hunt for it. So driving what the job will actually be and getting it in scope is so stupidly important that it's pretty cool. And I'll say one of the things I'm also doing coming here forward is doing interviews with hiring managers about their jobs that they have got open. So that way, here's the no crap real deal of what the job is. And we're looking at doing that in video format so people can actually look at it and go, oh, Now I know what this is. Cool. I will opt into this.
So I want to pose another question to you. We hear a lot about job hopping. If there were more folks in seats getting trained up, getting regular raises, and staying loyal to their employees, wouldn't this bring down salary inflation and create a more even distribution of talent? And then again, it will reduce job hopping, etc. I'm just curious to hear what you think about this and how it could help if we change and invest more in our employees, in our people, as opposed to just door in, door out mentality.
Yeah, so there's a number of pieces to that. And I know practitioners that have been in their roles with the same company for 30 years. When I look at what is really going to retain cyber practitioners, and I'm lumping leaders into that, is external factors and internal factors. So job title and pay, external. So if a company is going to pay me 20% more, all things that are equal, why not? Now, when we look at, and maybe there's tons of reasons not to not at still at that point. But when we look at other factors, I like to go back to, and my daughter's in a Montessori program right now. Montessori fundamentals. Like, how do you get people to stay basically engaged so that they continue learning? It's not learning to drive engagement, it's engagement to drive learning. So things like setting goals that are appreciable. So, like, kids, drinking fountain too high, don't want to go drink. Put it down at their level, they'll go do it. What that means is if the goals we build for our teammates are so ridiculously stupid, they're not going to leave. And then the other side of it is having the right amount of challenge. So children, therefore security engineers in my mind, if we also don't constantly allow them to do new things and change and grow and learn, then we're not going to retain them. So, hey, why are you on the market? I'm bored. I've been doing the same thing. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm not interested in it. I want to leave. And I think I can get paid more and maybe go to a different culture. a good friend of mine literally just did that. He was at a company where the culture was not phenomenal. They had stopped investing into security. So he's looking at it going, okay, we switched from concrete to building a house of cards. There's not much I can do about that. It's not interesting anymore. And I can get paid 20% more over there to do the things I want to do. Done. So the retention side is you have to grow. And there's a good friend of mine, he's a CISO for, we'll just say a large apparel company. What his whole premise is that, and if you really want to retain your people, you have to allow them to choose their own adventure. So what he does is he basically bases it off of the NSA model. If you love this aspect of security and you want to keep doing that, why don't we let you do that? Keep increasing your pay, keep increasing your opportunities, keep increasing your challenges in that specific slice, and we can retain you. And he's had almost no churn on his team. So if you want to know who he is, go look at big apparel companies that have had almost no churn on their team in the last 3 years. Yeah, it's a really great way to do that. And you have to understand the pay bands to stay competitive and keep your people. But to lose a person and retrain them to get a new person in is going to be way more and set you back on your time frame than it would be to just keep your other people from leaving.
Definitely. And I want to come back and press you harder on the benefits of hiring junior/entry level. So what benefits can you talk to about companies investing in training versus only looking for top talent and just creating this bigger gap in cyber shortages?
Yeah. So first off, we have to look at companies that are large enough to buy security people that can hire them. So usually that's somewhere around, unless we're talking about a well-funded startup. I'm not talking well-funded startups right now. I'm talking the larger companies. Usually about $1 billion a year in revenue is where it's time to start getting a CISO. And usually about $1 million in revenue or something is where you start having an outsourced IT person, and then you director of IT, and then 2 to 3 like a help desk and a director, and then after all of that, then eventually you get a security practitioner, and that's where they're like, well, we need somebody to do all of these things, run all of our compliance, run all of our technical security, talk to the board, and you're like, well, that's actually a vCISO. That's what you want. You want a CISO that is fractional and probably has a couple practitioners that can come in and bang on keyboards as required. And then a little bit after that is okay, full-time hires, and then enough to have a team. So there's only so many companies that can hire that many people on security. As we look at it, some of my best friends in the industry, whether it's companies that are doing exploit development or blue team work or what have you, they've got big teams. Some of their companies are focused around this, both attack and defense side. When I sit down for beers with them, hey, who are your top 3 people? Well, we've got Frank over there. He's an old NSA guy. He's just amazing. We've got this person, they're mid-career, so they're doing some amazing stuff. And let me tell you about my intern. It's almost always 3 people that they highlight, and almost always one of them is a person that has no business based off of their resume in security. But man, they're hungry, they're smart, they're passionate, and we're going to go back to this again. They want to learn. So there you go. And then effectively you don't hire for skills, you can teach skills, you hire for character and talent. So one of the things that we do at StrataCore, and a number of my former clients and friends still will do aptitude tests. Okay, maybe you finished an associates of history, and then you did a walkabout for 3 years, traveled the world. Doesn't seem like a good fit for security, do they? And then turns out they're wicked smart at math. They just weren't interested in it, so they didn't do it. And they're really good at analyzing things, and they're hungry. Check, check, check. Now we can put them into whatever training course, and we're going to contractually say, hey, we're going to put you through some of this training. So you're going to have to stay with us for at least 18 months so we can get the ROI on that training. Whatever it happens to be, figure that out. So I know that I'm going to bring you on. We're going to onboard you for the first 60 days. What do we have to do to make you part of the company? Then I'm going to send you to 2 weeks of training. And when you come back, you're going to know that you have a license to learn. And once you get that license to learn, now I'm going to team you up with either somebody internally here or one of our partners that supports us. And we're going to drive that conversation from there. And then I'm going to go, okay, great. We're going to build guide rails around your account. You're not getting root privileges. You're going to do some things. And before we allow you to even give the commit button to whatever it is you're working on, we're going to do some checks. And then next thing we know, we just took this person that doesn't look like they should be in security at all. And now, a year and a half later, they're one of our best security engineers. And oh, by the way, during that period, we had some amazing, effectively really cheap work that was done. And we built this amazing relationship with generally a new person. So when do you start seeing that, as an employer, when you start seeing value out of that model? Usually, if you can go through and align, the projects you want them to work on, you can see value at the 6-month, 5-month mark, substantial value. And then a year later, 2 years later, incredible value, assuming you can keep them.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like there's opportunity for enterprise companies to fill that gap, either start providing boot camps. I know there are banks out there that have internal boot camp programs, which I think is great. But do we rely on enterprises completely to fill that gap? Or maybe there needs to be, I don't know, a movement around showcasing these success cases more to make a bigger impact, because what you suggested makes perfect sense. I'm just wondering if there's another angle that we can get all these people into roles, because they're waiting. I see on LinkedIn every day, completed my cert, finished this, studied that, 5 certs, 6 certs. How do we get these people in who are waiting right now?
Well, let's tackle the cert thing, because I think this is very relevant. Having 30 certifications isn't necessarily great, because they're probably not at least one. If you have 30 certifications, probably one of them is good.
But it does show that you are at least hungry and you're taking it seriously, right? I'm not pro or against, but maybe I would be more inclined to give this person a chance than someone who has shown no, as you say, aptitude up until this point in their resume.
So and this is, me being completely transparent and candid here, when I see a ton of certs, my question is on judgment. So I will go through with a critical eye and, wow, okay, cool. None of these are relevant to what you're working on. So who in your professional network are you listening to? Or are you just trying to design this whole thing yourself in this career guide path? And like, why? So first off, I don't want to bash certifications. There's some great, amazing certifications out there, but the vast majority of certifications fail you in that the vast majority do not test what you can do. So get back to Christian Espinosa, he calls them paper tigers. Hey, I've got all these certifications. Look at all my paper. I've got them. Great. When you open up Wireshark, where do you click? Okay, not useful. So that's where there's only a few certifications out there that test what you can do. And that's me as the employer. I don't care because I can give you the book to know what you need to know. I care what you can do, period. Or what I can coach you to be able to do. If it's 15 certifications that test what you know, that's not going to be relevant. If it's 30 questions that what you know, or certifications. When it's one certification that tests what you can do, and the one that I generally recommend out there, the gold standard that my employers asked for all the time, and I always asked them why, by the way. So it's not just they asked for it. We're getting down to root reasoning here. Stephen, Offensive Security Certified Professional, OSCP, by OffSec. They don't pay me for this. But, okay, great. With this certification, I know that at the very least, this candidate knows how to VPN into a network. Funny, that's a differentiator. They probably can netcat. They probably know how to nmap. They can navigate a couple different operating systems. They know how to move around and navigate the operating system. They know how to think enough to find an access over here that then you pivot to on this one to unlock that thing to go through and then escalate and get root from both red team, obviously, but from the blue team. Oh, I used to do DLL reflection in order to escalate. Cool. So that means we probably need to reduce our DLL portfolio. Like I know that somebody can do those things. I know that there's a couple other ones out there that are doing that. Josh Mason is going to rework some of the INE classes coming up here soon. I know that they do plenty of doer certifications. And then Mr. the Cyber Mentor also, I haven't done any certifications myself yet, but I know that he's doing some that do. And there's probably some others that I'm missing that I don't know about. But again, the relevance there is, are you doing certifications that the hiring manager and HR know and love? And remember, they have for every one security person, 10 IT people and 100 developers to go no. So are they going to take the time to go through and of the entire crazy cybersecurity certification map, really invest the time to know what is what and the difference between a GSE and an A+? No, they're not. It's not in their best interest. That's part of the reason that I usually recommend going and doing a cloud cert like AWS. They should really start paying me for hyping them, by the way. Solutions architect, get a little bit of that cloud stank on your resume.
There's the famous saying, when everyone zigs, you should zag. So you're saying stand out, differentiate with different certs, don't necessarily go down the traditional cert path as a way to stand out. But at the same time, it's in line with where the industry is now. Cloud is a super hot market. And I would assume that there is also a lack of experienced cloud professionals.
There is. So here's part of the reason I usually recommend some of the cloud stuff is when we look at it, if you are going through and doing your basic IT level certifications, you are setting yourself for a help desk, which is totally fine. If that's what your market and you need to go that route, I fully support. Let me be clear on that. Do what you need to do. But in generally in enterprise, those roles are always seen as a cost function that negatively impacts the bottom line of the company, which means during any downturn, or mergers and acquisitions or divestitures, who's going to get cut first? Now, when you go to a company where development is the revenue, literally what the work that you do drives the revenue for the company. So cloud companies. If you're doing security for one of those companies, you've aligned yourself to revenue, which means now you have way more value to the company. And because there's a stronger need for people with that, you can accelerate into security faster. So do you have to know how to plug in RAM on your motherboard to be a cloud security practitioner? No, you just click and go, hey, I need more RAM. Provision. So I think that's a great route to go. Now, we're talking basically mass market people here. For anybody that's the more junior people, maybe still in high school that might be listening to this, and think about college, or maybe vets that have a GI Bill and want to go do, go really do this. I generally don't recommend cybersecurity degrees. Oh no. Let's talk about why. Because again, most cybersecurity degrees, there are exceptions. Believe me, there are exceptions. And I literally go around, if I'm at conferences and there's colleges there and they say they do security, I grill them on what it is they actually do. So most bachelors are getting you ready for a couple of the foundational level certifications that, again, I don't think are totally relevant. Most master's degrees in cybersecurity are half preparation for the CISSP. I have it. I believe it's good. It's relevant. CISSP, cool. But I could also go study CISSP on my own or go to boot camp and do that instead of paying $20,000 to sit in a lecture to go get CISSP when I could do that for way, way, way cheaper. For veterans, again, Syracuse University's Onward Opportunity Program, it's free. Go do that one. Yeah, so usually those master's degrees are like half MBA and half CISSP prep. So why not go get an MBA and do CISSP on your own? Check. The degrees I usually recommend are at the master's level, Georgia Tech's computer science. At the bachelor's level, computer science. Oh, that's funny. I said computer science twice. And then at the associate level, Green River, and I don't know if they have a remote version yet. They might. They're just east of Tacoma, Washington. They have a phenomenal practitioner program. Like week 1, Netcat, Nmap, Splunk. That's the stuff I need people to be able to do. So if you're going that route, go that route. And then for security, for leaders, we're looking at mid-market or mid-career or later. If you're going back to school, figure out what you're the best at. And maybe it is incredibly technical work, or maybe it is an MBA side and doing scaling of the companies versus running the companies. Boy, I think I took us in a completely different direction than you asked, but let's go back.
It's okay. We're going with the flow. So I know we're coming up on time, and I have a couple more questions if you want to keep going. So I'd like to end off with some leadership advice, because you just touched on it very briefly there. So most companies don't train technical folks with soft skills to become leaders. What advice, and this is a 2-part question, what advice would you give to future leaders in InfoSec? And what advice would you give people wanting to advance their career financially if they don't want to become a manager, director, aka leader?
Let's take that one because that's easier. So if you don't want to become a leader and go through like the old archetypical engineering path of, hey, I'm an engineer, then suddenly stamp engineering manager. Ooh, that can be a rough transition. And I'll bet most of the people on this call have worked for people that happened to. So if you want to stay like an engineer in cybersecurity, stay technical, and you still want to progress in that, the options for you are going to bigger companies with more opportunities to stay technical. A very good friend of mine, close friend, and I need to see if he landed it or not. He's going to Oracle or at least interviewing, and he's in the last rounds, probably has the offer. He's probably already there. And sometimes I'm a shitty friend and I don't always follow up the week I should. They've got, I believe it's 6 different steps of technical people. And I love him to death, but he is not a leader. Could he be? Sure, if you put in the effort, but that is not what he is designed for. It's not who he is. So you have to start looking at companies that are big enough to support your technical depth. So obviously, like your FANG, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, companies where it's a big building and there's only one name on it, those are probably the companies you need to start targeting. So if you're going through a networking campaign in order to try to expand into that, you should be networking with people from those companies. Smaller companies, on the flip side, startups at the technical level. But if you really want to stay technical, startups might not be the route, because maybe after round A, a little bit after that, when the technical team is starting to build because they're well funded and you don't have to do the other stuff. If you're like seed or pre-seed into one of those companies, probably not going to enjoy it, because you're also like, at that point, everyone in the company is client facing. Now let's switch to people that want to get into leadership. The median all-in compensation for a CISO in North America, according to Heidrick & Struggles 2020 review, all in, so we're talking base pay, bonus, equity, benefits, etc., is $784,000 a year. Cool. You can reach those numbers as individual contributors, by the way, in those large companies. So take that with a grain of salt. Now that's we're looking at literally every CISO in North America, and we're also like the 15th time CISOs are going to skew that number up. So you're not going to hit that first, second, third time.
CISO doesn't have to be your end goal. You could be a SOC director or IT director. There are other leadership roles. So
yes. So we'll scale back. If that's like the one of the starting points, and then we'll go back. So going from an individual contributor to a leader, like say SOC or whatever, there is a level of bureaucracy that you have to understand, where there will be inefficiencies that will piss you the hell off. Well, it shouldn't be like, that's dumb. Yeah, that's the way it is. And should is my second least favorite word in English. So should. Now, okay, great. So how do you get around those? What should, again, dumb word, you do to get ready for that? One of my favorite books there is The First 90 Days. It's mine. My copy's tabbed way out here. Go through and read that, because if you're looking at moving into one of those roles, you don't want to read the book after you've already gone through your first 90 days. You want to read it before that and figure out what it is. So I always, like, even if this is something that you're looking at doing 3 years from now, cool. Let's build out what a first 90 days looks like. Well, I can't know that until I know the company. Bullshit. Yes, you can. You can get 80% of what you need to do. I know that in my first 90 days, I am going to do a one-on-one with legal, because I need to have the relationship with them. If anything happens, I have to have them on my speed dial. Boom. Yeah, of course. Okay, put it on the list all the way through. One-on-ones with everyone above me as far as I can. One-on-ones with my peers. One-on-ones with my anybody that's reporting to me. All the stuff. I have to know what is I'm building, why I'm building it. I got to know, and then you just make it a 90-day plan. And for me, I call the end of my 90-day plan is when we transition from you and me into us. And the second piece is I transition from being pulled by the company to pulling the company. Okay, that's my goal. That's my mission for the first 90 days. Now I need to figure out how to do that. And then that drives the bigger thought process of, okay, now how am I going to do that as a leader? So if I'm sitting down with my boss and they're going to give me feedback at 90 days, then shouldn't I also be doing this other stuff? So there's, a ton of things that you can do. And then also volunteering for other roles, like getting on hiring committees, getting on other boards, getting exposure outside of the company. And then the second book I normally recommend is, well, as you get into management, whether it's on the delivery side or on pre-sales side, it's all sales. Every bit of it is sales. You're either selling something to management or you're selling stuff to your people. So that's why I recommend Selling Above and Below the Line, a great book that you should read. And also start sponsoring me, Skip Miller. Figuring out how to talk to different stakeholders is incredibly important. So take the technical things, put them off to the side, and just talk to people. If you can't talk, if you don't know how to tell a story, then you need to work on telling your stories. Setting the table.
What would you say to folks? You just alluded to it now. Put your technical skills to the side. Do you need to give up your passion for tech when you want to move into leadership roles, or is there a path for balance where you can still be technical and focus on leadership? Because obviously that takes up a lot of time being a leader.
So The answer is it's not an either or. We're not looking 0 or 1. Like this is an 8-bit this is an 8-bit byte, and it goes from 0 to 1. And it's gray. And it also depends on the culture that you're working in. That's one driver. I asked the social media interwebs about 1.5 years ago what they want me to talk about or write on. And that was what you asked. It was actually one of the biggest questions of how do you stay technical as a leader, technically relevant? So there's a number of roles that actually scratch that itch of engineering and leadership. And one of those is sales engineering. Yes, it's got the word sales in it. It's scary. Everybody hates sales. It's fun to hate sales. Turns out I'm actually more of a salesperson than I'm an engineer. Boy, that took some screws that I had to twist and move around. Sales engineering is a great way to lead clients and engineering. So it's still very similar. And then getting into a role where you manage sales engineers, you still have to know the product. You have to know the landscape. You have to know all the stuff that's still technically exciting. You still have to go know what the APIs are, et cetera. You still have to do that work. So that's one route. Or just technical sales. So like a smaller company where you are the engineer and you're also in charge of getting new business development to come through. So those are great ways to do it. Technical project managers, so TPM versus just a regular project manager, or traditional. I don't like the word regular. Traditional project manager, you still have to know what to do. So like I was leading a team one time, and we're setting up an exercise, and they're looking there and go, "Hey, we need to change this routing path." Okay, cool. We'll change it. You have my approval. Go. We can't find the router. Scan the subnet. It's probably in the top 5 of the IP range. Oh, there's a router over here. Yeah, can you log in? I can log in. I don't have to know how to do that, but I do have to know where to look to point them in the right direction. And then when they actually finally got it up and they had the config, and we looked through it together, and I go, okay, that one, and then here's the resources that you need to know to do it. Let me know when you've built out the command. Okay, that's right, go. And then as you go further and further up, we'll say we're looking at a larger company, there can be points when you realize that you're just not on the keyboard anymore. And there's 2 decisions there. Is that who I am? Is that such a part? And I always go back to who are you, right? Is that so important to you that you're willing to give it up to do what you're doing now? Or do you miss it so much that you need to give up what you're doing now to go to a slightly different position where you can balance? So and I know guys that have solved that a number of different ways. 1, completely moving companies. 2, giving up on one and going the other all in and just accepting it. 3, starting their own company where they get to do both. 4, switching positions in their company to have a better blend. And like the CTO, the chief technology officer of the company, their job is to take technology from concept and ideation to production. So you can still go all the way to the C-suite and still be incredibly technically relevant. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's where we were going, working your way back from the top of the pyramid, which is CIO, CISO, and then...
Or CEO.
Yeah, within the security pyramid.
Why not CEO of a security company? I want people to realize that. The CISO or CIO is not the cap. And the more we talk about, oh, I want to be a CISO. Yeah, then what next? Then I want to be CISO again. And then what? And then a CISO again. Why not the CIO? You can do that? Hell yeah, you can do that. And then what's next? Then CIO again? No, you could be CEO. You could be the president of the board of directors. Like the sky is the limit, not just a CISO is the limit.
This has been a fascinating episode. I think we're going to have to make 2 parts out of this, the first time ever. But to make it
challenge accepted.
To make it a clean, even 2-part series, maybe I will throw in one more question.
Sure.
What would you say is the most important soft skill that you would recommend to future leaders? Communication?
Okay. Communication, yep. And usually what that comes down to is telling stories. Another friend of mine who's a CEO, I'd love to just say many of these names, but I can't because Chatham House rules. These are things that are told to me in confidence. Oh my gosh, Stephen's got so many friends. No, like, just they're in confidence. They're under friend DA. Yeah, so he went through an executive MBA with a really well-known school. like schools that we all know that we trust. And this particular executive MBA, about 80% of their coursework was telling stories. So if that's what CEOs are being trained on, then you as the practitioner, the leader, the whatever inside of, whether it's cybersecurity specifically or tech adjacent or whatever, being able to tell those stories is how you get to that next level. And I used to, when I was still like pure engineering, it would frustrate the crap out of me. You go to say a conference, or you've got a meeting with the big boss or whatever, and you walk in and you're expecting something juicy. Hey, this sim is dying. This is the next one that's coming down the road. You need to learn it. And then here's some cheat sheets for it. They don't care about that. They're there to tell stories, to get the organization to understand why their idea is there, and then get you to yes. So you walk in and like, I was at a conference, gosh, maybe 15 years ago. And I was so excited for the keynote. And the whole keynote thing was just, you can do it. Like, no, I need to know how. Like, no. So I literally walked out, like in the last 5 minutes, I could still hear from outside and like get a cup of coffee. But no, I don't need to know that I can do it. I need to know some juicy stuff. So there will, like, especially for like my strong introverts and engineers out there, you're going to have cognitive dissonance in this. It's going to feel disingenuous to you because that's just like how it works. But if you're not playing the game, you're not learning to tell stories, and then you'll do it enough, then you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. And then suddenly be like, oh, I should have started this earlier. Oh, this is, and then it's game on. So communication, telling stories.
Thank you so much, Stefan. This has been, again, I'll say a fascinating episode. Thank you for spending the extra time with us today. For anyone who would like to get in touch, I know you do mentorship, and you mentioned you're fully booked, but if anyone wants to get on to 2022 calendar potentially, how can they get in touch with you?
So follow me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. Where else do I post? Of course, Twitter. So like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. But yeah, so mostly I'm on LinkedIn because of the professional development piece. That's where I live the most. And I am thinking I literally have every slot booked until 2022 right now. But I am thinking about doing like hot posts where I haven't launched this yet, but it'll probably be like Wednesdays. Go check out my profile and I'll update my mentor link and add another 30-minute mentorship block, 1 or 2 coming up. So you can potentially still find more time with me. I haven't started it yet. It'll be coming out soon. By the time this is published, maybe it'll be out. So yeah, check it out. And I kind of have 2 goals. The first goal is to, 1, take a bunch of professionals and make this a new profession. I want to see this elevated where we have clear outlines of what is cool, what is not cool. Similar to what CISSP and ISACA do. Just really drive the professional piece. And then the second one is I want to get more people in the industry, regardless of what positions we need more people in the industry.
Awesome. Well, we'd love to keep connected and support in any way we can. So thank you so much again, Stefan, and to the rest of you, we'll see you next time. That's a wrap for this episode of Cybersecurity Heroes. Practical and experiential knowledge on a day in the life of security heroes. Catch our next episode by subscribing or following through your favorite podcast platform. If you're listening on Apple Podcast, please leave a rating for the show. They really help a lot. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.